the photos that come out of this, sometimes I don't know if it's me or it's him, and I'm pretty sure it's all him. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to make this quick video sharing you everything that I use for my photography business. So this is the equipment that I've used for the past like 4 or 5 years. I have yet to buy new equipment just because I love what I have already. Like, what camera body do I use? I have this bad boy here. This is the Nikon D5300. This entire family is wonderful, so you don't have to get this one. In fact, my sister, I believe, has a 7100. Now this is not full frame. Now what does full frame exactly mean? With a full frame, it's not as cropped. So if you had say a 50mm lens, it will be more like a 35mm on a full frame versus really tight on this one here. If you're looking more into videography than photography, then I highly recommend you try to look into the 7100 series, just because they have so much more features that might help you with that business. But if you're just looking to get into photography, then you don't need to get anything more than like this one. Now, why did I choose Nikon over like Canon? To be honest, the long story short was I saw that the Nikon colors were better. I wasn't too familiar with editing, so I wanted to make it easy. But now that I've gotten used to this, I can't imagine switching over to Canon, just because the functionalities of these are just so subtle and so unique that I'm used to using Nikon. Canon's great. I think the T6i, T3i are both wonderful options for you to look into. So moving on to my lenses. So these are the lenses that I use. I started out with a kit lens. That is something that came with my camera body, but the very first purchase I ever made was this bad boy here. This is the Nikkor series. Don't really know the name. 50mm f-stop of 1.8. So you might be wondering, so what is the big deal of me measuring f-stop? If you can notice the blurry background that I just created, well, this camera that I'm using to film, which I will talk about later, but this is why you want to worry about f-stop so much, and it's because the lower the f-stop, the better the blur. This was a good starter for me when I was trying to develop my style, and I was trying to figure out what kind of photographer I wanted to be. So I didn't want to invest in a super expensive lens immediately. I think this was like only about $100. 50mm is a staple, so if you don't have it in your camera bag, I suggest you get one soon. The problem that I encountered when I was using this for my portraits, and especially when I was taking dance photography as well as wedding photography, is that when I had like a huge wedding party, then I would find myself being cramped into like the other side of the room, or heaven forbid that I actually run out of room to back, and sometimes I have to do something else to squeeze the party together. This is when I realized that this lens wasn't ideal enough for me to take larger parties and for dance and wedding photography. This was phenomenal for portraits and when you're out in the open taking modeling photos, because it doesn't matter how far you move. But when you're in a time crunch and under those pressured situations, this is where I found issues, and that is why I invested in this lens here. It is the Sigma 35mm f-stop of 1.4. So this was a 1.8, this was a 1.4, and oh boy, the photos that come out of this, sometimes I don't know if it's me or it's him, and I'm pretty sure it's all him. All the photos that you see on my website, majority have been taken with this, because I've used this the longest. I used this for maybe like a year or so, and this has been going on for over 4 to 5 years, and it's still going strong. The 35mm seems like be the perfect sweet spot for me to take photos for my various gigs, so I no longer encounter the issue of having to back out too much. I know that sometimes some people prefer zoom lenses because they want to have that flexibility without having to move, but I've never had that much of an issue using this, or even weddings, especially like during the ceremony where I have to move all over the place. I enjoy it. I like the control, but every individual is different. Now, if you were going to look into a more expensive zoom lens, I highly suggest the 24 to 70 millimeter. I don't have it personally, but that's something that I've been eyeing, and the f-stop isn't too shabby. It seems like an overall very good focal length because 24 millimeters is even shorter than this, so that's really nice. But it also goes as far as 70 millimeter. Sometimes you just have to find the perfect lens, and you don't need to invest in like all sorts of equipment. I used to be kind of embarrassed by the fact that I didn't really have very many lenses, but the thing is, what I have found is that the quality of the photos, or the photos that I produce, aren't any different from, you know, a photographer that might have 4 or 5, you know, lens switch throughout the entire course of an event. But yeah, these are my lenses. Oh, I also wanted to give a shout out to a specific camera card. So this is the card that I use. You definitely want to go for the 64 gigs and the 128 gigs, just because if you are going to take photos, you don't want to end up running out of storage. I will link to my favorite SD cards in the description box below. What am I using to film? I have a vlogging camera. I used to film on this, and then I just didn't like how burdensome it was. The file was just too large, and then I just didn't have an ideal enough lens. So I'm actually recording on my vlogging camera, which is the Canon G7X, and it's the 3rd generation. I used to have the 2nd generation. Both generations are phenomenal. For 3rd generation, the only complaint I have is the fact that sometimes the focusing can be a little weird, whereas I didn't have that much of an issue with the 2nd generation. But either way, both of them are very phenomenal. It is the holy grail of all vlogging cameras if you were looking to invest in a vlogging camera. There you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!